Greetings, guys. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Monad, and this is my channel, Evolve with Monad. For those of you that are new here, I'm a professional intuitive empath, and if you're interested in booking with me for a reading, you can find me on evolvingwithmonad.com. That's one word, evolvingwithmonad.com. All right, guys, let's go ahead and jump into the video. The message that I have today is don't use the bathroom where you eat, or don't mix a workplace environment with pleasure or sexual energy or connections. Very rarely do those things work out. There are of course, exceptions to that rule. There are people that have had that situation happen and they made it work. There are very famous couples that we see. One that comes to mind is Joe and Mika Brzezinski. Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, who are news anchors or political talking heads. I don't know what they are, what their classification is. Joe is everything. He's a Renaissance man, I suppose. But in any case, they're on MSNBC and they worked together for years. Both had marriages, left their marriages, and married each other. And we all watched that play out on television. But for the most part, that stuff is the stuff of nightmares. It's the stuff of the spawning of the Me Too movement. It's the stuff that Times Out, Me Too, all that jazz. Sexual harassment, political correctness in the workplace. And not in a bad way, but just like it's time to be respected. It's time to have boundaries. Very rarely does that work. Now, I have talked to people that I know up close. I have observed it in my own life, and I've even had my own temptations, y'all. I am no saint. I am a sinner. But I put my good foot down and make my soul the winner. That's a quote from Jill Scott. But the thing that I want you to understand is that it's never usually a good idea because it gets super muddy. And I have counseled people that have had that situation happen, and maybe I advise them prior to, don't get involved, and then I have to counsel them through it. This would be actual clients of mine or just friends that I've observed do this. Okay, I remember when I first met my husband. He works in a certain industry, and not girl, it sounds so salacious. It's not. But we're both in the same business, and in the restaurant essentially business when we first met, as I was doing catering professionally. And when I met him, I thought, I wondered about his like track history in the same way that we all do about people that we date. And I asked him if he had ever dated anybody at work, and he said, when I was younger, I had. My husband is older than me, but he was like, when I was younger, I had. But he's like, I learned real quick not to mix that kind of business with pleasure because it never goes well. And he said, I watched it happen in that, place where everybody was kind of like dating each other and it turned into a mess and there'd be dramas and whatever. He is a Capricorn, so once he figures out a lesson like that, he sticks to it, and he has his own interesting set of rules that are very healthy, normal kind of societal rules. But most guys wouldn't subscribe to that, and it impressed me with him because I could tell he meant it. It wasn't something he was saying to impress me. We weren't at that stage of our relationship where he needed to make me feel anything other than he was just telling me his truth. And I thought, very wise. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people don't do that because we're at work with people, we're in close proximity to them, flirtations happen, and it can be very disruptive. I've had moments and situations that I've observed, whether it be clients or friends, where one thing comes to mind specifically. Someone was dating somebody. They were dating for a long time, trying to figure out their relationship. They happened to be long distance, as one of the persons was in a residency in another state. My client was making a lot of efforts to go and be of assistance to him and be a sweetheart and whatever. And he started having an affair with someone he was doing a residency with. And these are younger folks here for anybody listening. And so they were in their 20s and they're still figuring out life and all of that. But it was quite disruptive, as you can imagine. We went through all of the teaching of her raising her vibration about her intuition. That's one thing, message, that an affair is here to teach you, or any kind of interaction like that. is about how to tune into your intuition, because we started working together prior to that ever being an issue, but it became an issue during the course of our working together. And what I will tell you is that as I walked her through for that season of her life, I was with her, and I walked her through that. And what ended up happening essentially is that the affair completely blew apart. Both partners ended up knowing, because the person that he was having an affair with also had a boyfriend, a fiance, in fact. The fiance and my client ended up having interesting chats, as people do tend to have a tendency to do. And now it's just a point of shame. What made it interesting was that it was a game, yeah? And one person was playing more than the other. In this case, the woman that he fell for was playing him. He ended up getting his feelings hurt, which I didn't mind, because my personal interests regarded my client, meaning I'm always on the side of my client. Not to say that I'm always saying a client is right, but in this case, they happen to be right, and that lesson needed to be learned. Sometimes people need to get burned to understand situations. But regarding what I'm saying here to you about keeping out the affair, keeping out the energy of the workplace, you have to be very, very careful with that, because it can go bad very quickly. It can go from 0 to 100, and many times I've seen people lose jobs. I have seen friends get ostracized. I have seen the dynamic shift when the sexy time's not so hot and the interest isn't as peaked as it once was. I have seen spouses come up to jobs where I have worked and had whole dramas where police had to be called. When I was in corporate America, I've seen some things go down like that that were like, wow, the kind of thing that has everybody chatting by the water cooler right after it happens and for the next few days. It is just a really interesting way not to want to spend your time. You go to work to work. You're not there to make friends. Now, we are in a whole new landscape after the pandemic, where we figured out that the corporate America situation may have been a shill, in that we did not need to actually be present and accounted for at the workspace. This delights me, but I was ahead of the trend as I left corporate America years ago, vowed to myself I was never going to step foot back to work around people. But that had to do a lot more with my gifting and my empathetic nature than it did about not wanting to work. I work a lot, probably a lot more than I ever have. However, I didn't want to work around people. That was another personal message. Maybe someone here needs to hear that. You can shape your life and create what you want for yourself. So what I did was I moved in a direction where I was away from people, because those messy dynamics were a lot. And for anybody that's an intuitive and an empath, you're picking up all of that. You end up being everybody's counselor. You're helping the person who's crying in the bathroom after their husband has stormed up there and like threatened to kill everybody. All that stuff. It was a lot. Back to you guys, though, in the message, for any of you that know it. You may have found your spouse at work, and if you do, I'm telling you, I study this a little bit because I really always like to inform my clients with data. It's the former teacher in me. About 16% of those affairs work, okay? So whether it's like a professor or student, you guys have seen that dynamic as well. About 16% of those actually work out for the long term, okay? So that's a hell of a gamble. And unless you're a gambler, unless you love Vegas, unless you love to roll the dice, I highly suggest that you really, really think this out. Now, I remember in a specific case personal to me, and I'm going to give you two examples, a personal situation of mine, also of one that I observed that went all the way left. Um, I will go first, as we ladies should always do. So what I will tell you is that I definitely was in corporate America, had a new coworker who breezed in from another state, and he was handsome and attractive, and he liked crystals and metaphysical-ish, and we would sit at the lunchroom and chat, and it was like high school, because everybody would make fun of us, because here I am, the kind of nerdy spiritual girl, talking to this really kind of hot bohemian guy, an unlikely pair, people are haters, and we were chatting, and I was super, super interested. Now, message, here's the deal. At the time, I was very much seeing my husband. I don't know if he was my husband at the time. I don't think he was, but I was very much dating him and seeing him, and in a very solid, stable relationship. But I found myself, can we talk? thinking about this person that I was working with in corporate America, thinking about this guy. And I found myself enjoying our conversations more than I thought. And I was doing what this is the danger of the affair of anything like this, even the emotional dalliance or an emotional affair. Emotional affairs, I think, are even more brutal, especially for women, because it's such a violation of our space and trust. I don't tolerate it at all. I've had it happen once in my early 20s where someone had an emotional and then actual affair, but the emotional affair is when I was like, you're cut out. And then I've had it happen later. I never deal with it. I've never been able to be like pulled in and gaslit into that. So be careful with that, because the emotional affair it just kind of violates so much. But what I will tell you here is, especially if it's done in a very sloppy way. I have another video coming up about the etiquette of the guma. So even though I'm going to tell you about this, guys, I talk to so many people and I deal with all kinds of things. I have no place to stand in judgment. My thing in any situation when we're working together is to assess how to help you navigate and strategize whatever you're dealing with. I hear everything and anything. Okay, you can't shock me. I didn't think that at a time, but now I really don't know that I'm shockable. However, back to this. I was like, this guy, super breezy, super cool. I'm playing Jill Scott in my head. I'm living my best life. Now, here's what's interesting. My angels are always communicating with me. I remember coming home and I remember thinking, like, he had like texted me because we'd exchanged numbers. So I just read his text and I was thinking about him, and I was cutting a can of tuna open. And even though I had like a good can opener and all that stuff, the one that like makes it seamless edges, I remember thinking, I am going to cut myself on this. I don't know why. I just had an instant premonition that I was going to cut myself. And then I started drifting off and I was standing there. And my husband was like at his computer desk and he was working. It was in the evening. And I was cutting this can of tuna open. And I did end up cutting myself because my mind had wandered off. And I was thinking, like, is this like, what is this with this guy? Like, why do I have this emotion or feeling, or why do I feel titillated or excited, or what's going on? Cut my finger, which was the premonition coming true, my own prediction coming true about that, but also it was an omen. I looked at the place on my finger where I cut, because guys, there's a message. Your body's always communicating with me, and the finger that I had cut had to do with had to do not necessarily with affairs, but relationships, sexual energy, feeling satisfied, all of that stuff. My angels were talking to me. Now here's what happened. Message, message, message. When I cut my finger, I was like, oh, I cut my finger and it was on a tuna can, so I was a little concerned. And my husband came over from his office to the kitchen, and it was like a pretty good bleed. I cut it pretty deep. It was weird. Well, was it weird or was it a message? And he started washing my finger and taking care of it, and got out the Neosporin and the bandage and patched me up. My husband, who wasn't my husband at the time, patched me up. Do you get it, guys? So I was thinking about somebody else, because I'm human, because this is a normal thing to happen, especially in our monogamous relationships that America has adopted, very puritanical, very different than other countries, very different than a lot of places, which is interesting. I know another message here, guys, because I hear so much, no one is really doing any of the things that they say they're doing, meaning all of that monogamy and all of that energy. It's very interesting, and I think that there needs to be a more open dialogue about it so that we can have healthier discussions and also understandings about what our expectations are, right? So that's another video for another time, but my husband patched me up. And so what my angels said to me, never talk to my husband about it, didn't have to. I did talk to a best friend about it, though, as we will do, won't we, ladies? But I got the full message here, and the full message was, do not be involved in this, don't really indulge in this. And ironically, whoever you are so interested in that's talking to you about the clarity of amethyst, would he have been here putting a band-aid on your finger and one of those little finger condoms? Because my husband is in the restaurant business, so we always have those little finger condoms. Would he have done that? No. No, the person that ended up being my husband, my life partner, did do that, though. He was here with me, and he took care of me. Okay? So, I said to you a second ago, I talked to a best friend about it. And I did. And she knew that I was starting to have feelings for this person, and I did what we all do. We chat, and I chatted with my bestie. And I was like, girl, This guy is just pushing every button in all of the right places. He was also very access to his shadow side. I was very attracted. He was something I wasn't used to, and it was very, very attractive for me. And so she advised me, gave me great advice. She said, "Do you want your career? Do you want your job? What are you doing?" And she was matter of fact. She was almost mean, but I appreciated her. I took her advice. She wasn't wrong. And then my angels followed up with their little lesson with the tuna can and my cut finger and my husband's nurturing and all that stuff. But in the weeks leading up, weeks, okay, a few weeks that I was in my head about this person, I remember thinking that my bestie was right, and that even though it was hard because I was attracted to someone, and attraction always clouds our clarity and our judgment, I decided I would do what was the right thing. And so I just absolutely disengaged. The second I decided to disengage, I wrote myself a little letter because I believe in scripting. And so a few lines, not even a letter. I was like, angels, pass this cup before me. Also, give me absolute clarity. Within a couple of days, this person that I was thinking was so magical, um, had popped up and ended up having like a whole pregnant girlfriend or wife or something that he had not mentioned a word about. All of a sudden, the information became available to me. Hashtag, meanwhile, back at the lunch table, we were having all these like deep conversations and other things. Not that we did anything. There was not a single sexual energy or physical touch or anything exchanged. It was all in the head. However, what I will tell you is it was a powerful lesson. Now, fast forward, that same friend who gave me really good, solid advice to not ruin my career over a dalliance or over an attraction, I gave the similar advice to, and in fact, the same exact advice. In fact, I took it a step up because I'm extra that way, hashtag Leo energy, and I predicted that she probably shouldn't sleep with someone, probably shouldn't do something, that it would mess up her life in ways that she couldn't imagine. And I felt like it was a pretty fantastical prediction. I was like, God, I see people have affairs all the time. Why do I feel so adamant that this is going to be such a detrimental course of action for her? But I wasn't wrong. Every single thing I said and more happened. And she didn't take my advice. Empaths out there, are you listening? How many people have you advised that maybe have advised you, you've taken it in, and they absolutely disregard you? Because people are naturally hedonistic. We all are, right? We're pleasure seekers. So for her, she absolutely couldn't resist the temptation that was sitting next to her. And we all will have that moment in that temptation. We will have a coworker that we're attracted to. We'll have a boss that we're into. We'll have maybe someone that is beneath us, maybe a subordinate that we want to do a power play and power role with. But it never, ever, ever really, except for that 16% of the time, doesn't end up as a hot mess. And I watched this person destroy her whole life and have like incredibly deleterious effects on her life regarding her child, herself, her body, her health, everything. Giving herself stress related diseases, having all kinds of stuff, fully contorted and distorted her life for a workplace affair. And she was delighted in it, guys. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm having it and I'm fighting it. It wasn't like my thing where I was like, what the hell's happening here? She was very much like, I'm the bad guy. So she went in knowing that and feeling very good about it. She said that, that song was super popular and she loved it and she claimed it. She didn't take my advice. That's okay. People don't take my advice all day, and people pay me sometimes not to take my advice, and they also pay me sometimes to call me back and say, I should have taken your advice. You were right. And that's okay. I coach a lot of practitioners and metaphysical people as well, and sometimes we don't listen, myself included. But this is an easy one, and it's a no-brainer. Unless you are sure that this person is not attached, and in this person's case, who didn't take my advice, she was having a whole situation with somebody who had a whole marriage and kids and the whole thing. And I watched that, and I actually was like, girl, I was embarrassed for her, really. But many of you guys have seen workplace affairs not go well. Maybe you've been in one and it hasn't gone well. And maybe you are the exception and you're the 16% if you are, comment below. If it's sanctioned and if there's clean endings on each side, meaning nobody's attached, there's not drama, it's possible it's still tricky to navigate. Because what happens usually, and I've seen it happen in corporate America, is someone will date somebody and they date somebody else in the office, and then it's this whole incestuous chain, and you're supposed to work, but you're pissed because he's talking to her or she's talking to him or they're talking to each other. It's high drama. And in the case of the person that I predicted, it was the same high drama where they would like walk around the building together or whatever, like during lunch, and it was like high school, like, well, I'm walking with Sally Sue, well, Jilly Jane was there today, and this was all same-sex situations in that case, but Jilly Jane was there today. Oh, they're jealous of me. Yeah, she wants her to do the wedding, but I don't think that I really, and this and that. It was all high drama. That should not be what people are paying you to do. And I always think it's a sign of immaturity. I'm going to say, no offense if this has been you. We've all been there, guys. Like I said, I just told you my story. I've been there. However, the following through of the thing to the point of destroying your life, highly unwise, highly unadvisable. Take my foolish advice. Is it foolish? And steer clear. Do not shit where you work. Do not eat where you shit. Do not any of the things, okay? Don't do any of it. All right? That's a whole other story for another day. But do not mix up that sense of yourself with your income. Because when it goes awry, it goes so badly awry. And sometimes it's nothing that you can come back from, and your reputation, your attitude, your energy is permanently destroyed. Everybody knows your business. People know about your sexual prowess. People know about your kinks. Everything, man. I've seen all kinds of stuff get splayed out between friends and clients. It's been a hot hip hop scotch mess. You don't want any parts of that. If you really are interested in someone, you need to properly vet. Properly vet is what I say for any relationship before you jump right into it. Because what I heard regarding the person that I made the prediction for, there was a song that played the whole time whenever she would talk to me and lie or gaslight or whatever. It was, we got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper sprout. We've been going to Jackson ever since the fire went out. Oh, I'm going to Jackson. You good talking man. It is Johnny and June Cash, and it's one of my favorite songs. I'm sure it's off key, but when I tell you, that is a whole message regarding those workplace relationships. We got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper sprout. Even if they were not actually getting married, usually it's the attraction, it's the boredom. My husband doesn't pay attention to me. My wife is whatever you think your wife is. And then all of a sudden you're batting your eyelashes and it's all kiss the girl and you think you're like in the Little Mermaid. It's a hot mess because that doesn't have any sustainability. Properly vet if you want to date somebody. Make sure that you have the temerity and the freaking testicular fortitude to deal with a breakup at the workplace and still have to show up and not be crying in the bathroom and not be acting a hot mess because you're mad that Sally Sue is now talking to Jilly Jane and she used to be talking to Shayna, but now she's talking to Dana. You're going to get your feelings hurt. Okay? That's what I'm going to tell you. I've got to give you some auntie mama news today. Don't get your feelings hurt behind one of these workplace affairs because nothing will embarrass and crush your feelings and decimate your reputation like this situation. So that's your message for the day. Do not mix it unless you are absolutely sure that this person is available and that you both are mature enough to handle whatever fallout or fight may happen. Even if you are not happy with each other and you manage to do a relationship, you have to factor that in too, okay? So can you go to work and fight and not work with your spouse well and whatever? A lot of us have businesses with our spouses and stuff like that. That's a whole different story and maybe a different video. I'm talking about the workplace affair, that triangulation, that I'm away from my partner and over here, you know, I'm having this indulgence and and it's not with someone who's sane. A lot of the times too, guys, you don't know that the person you might be dealing with is crazy. I watched as the person that I made that prediction to literally got, it was like the blind leading the blind, literally got in bed with someone who was mentally ill, probably one of the more mentally ill people that I've run across. Not really intelligent, but highly manipulative. Yeah, cunning in a way like a child, like a toddler would be. And it was a whole mess, and she didn't understand it, and then she was all pulled into it, and then before you know it, her bad karma, it splashed over on each other. A mess, a message and a mess. June, I was like, so I was looking from away, and I was like, hate it for you, sis, hate it for you, because I tried to give you every heads up, just like she gave me a heads up. Also, maybe another side message: if someone's giving you some good counsel, take it. Use your own intuition. You see what I did? My angel still had a full conversation with me personally, but I did get good advice, even though that person did not take that good advice from me. Okay? All right, guys, come back and join me next time, and we will continue to evolve together.